Valentine's Day has come and gone, but that doesn't mean that romance shouldn't exist in a superhero universe. Join us as we decide the top 5 superhero couples in the Marvel Universe. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Jason Candy Heart Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or team from popular culture and teach you everything you need to know about it in about an hour. Except today is a super special day, so we're breaking our normal format.
That's right. Valentine's Day was very recently, and we thought that, comic book couples is an interesting topic, especially how romance, there have been romance comics, and romance, I think, has intrinsically been a part of superhero comic books since the very first superhero comic book of Action Comics #1, when Lois meets Superman and is scared by him. And he's like, "Don't worry, miss, I won't frighten you." But this is not the DC universe. This is the Marvel universe. And I think, ever since the first issue of Fantastic Four #1, romance has existed in the Marvel universe, and romance, I think, is a bigger part of superhero comic books than people realize.
I think so, and I do think that superhero storytelling tropes are pretty close to soap opera tropes.
Oh yes, very much
and
so.
I think that sometimes people don't want to admit that, but I think we should embrace that, because
they're both very melodramatic.
Because your stakes need to be high.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are in comas, sometimes people die or have secret doubles. They're very parallel, and I think celebrating that is great. Now,
this idea was not suggested by any of our students or anything like that. Why not? But the only rules we have for this list is that they just have to be couples that exist in the Marvel Universe. That's it.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear your top 5 lists. Please tweet them to us at our official Twitter at GHL Podcast. Please send us your top 5 Marvel Comics couples. Now, of course, this is not objective. These are our opinions and what we believe personally. So, Ashley, why don't you kick us off with your number 5 greatest Marvel couple?
My number 5 greatest Marvel couple actually rose to prominence in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and has since been...
Oh, should we state that real quick? This is for the comic books, not the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Yeah. Although I think that there's going to be crossovers.
Oh, sure.
But that's where mine came to prominence, and it's been sort of retconned back into the comics, and it is one that I have always had a strong emotional reaction to, and what I really appreciate it is that both of these characters are equals, and it's not a very sexy romance. I am talking about Steve and Peggy.
Oh, interesting.
I love them.
Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter.
I love them together. I think they do what you really want a couple to do. They bring out the best in each other. They each have what the other is deficient in, but they never really get an opportunity to be together. And I love a sad, unrequited love story. And so that's what this really is in volumes. And even though in the comics, it's more of like a Steve Sharon situation.
It is very much a Steve Sharon situation. I was going to ask you about that.
And I do like Steve and Sharon together in the comics. I don't like the way they've been portrayed together in the movies, but we could get there. It's
sure.
Okay. Steve and Peggy has always been the one that tugs at my heartstrings and I have the most reaction to. And so I thought a long time about not putting this on my list.
I'm going to admit to you, Captain America is not on my list anywhere.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But they have been together in the comics, even if it's only in flashbacks very briefly, so I feel confident adding this to my list. I like it because Steve has the kind of strength that Peggy needs, because Steve has a confidence of will. He's very centered. He's very good. He knows what he wants.
100%.
And Peggy has a confidence of execution. Peggy is smart and Peggy can get the job done. And when they're together, they're the best fighting force. Now then, obviously, when Steve gets all jacked up, it helps a little bit more. And Peggy doesn't get that opportunity. But I also love that even in a World War II sensibility, Steve doesn't need to put Peggy in her place. He's made better, and they're better together because she is as great as she is, and he is willing to admit when she can be in a position of power over him. I think this is something that they probably through osmosis absorbed from Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor.
Sure.
And so I appreciate...
I would say Steve Trevor, especially movie version Steve Trevor, absorbed that from
the movie
Steve
version
Rogers.
Absolutely did, but Steve and Diana have been together in the comimics longer than Steve and Peggy.
Fair point.
And they're both called Steve.
Yeah.
Both blonde guys named Steve.
That like fighting wars.
Yeah, for World War II. Well, I guess World War I with Diana. But,
World War I is only for the movie.
Yeah, but there's been some osmosis back and forth between those two couples, and I think that's the reason why I do like them, is I like the DC Comics
the
parallel
heroes both wear
to
the
them.
flag.
Yeah, yes, they do. And the civilians both wear like dope bomber jackets.
Mm-hmm.
And I did want to include this on my list because I have a little bit of unrequited pining for them as a character as a couple.
Steve Rogers?
No, more for. I mean, if I could have my way, I would choose Peggy over Steve. Especially Haley Atwell. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I want more, and I would love like a mini series that dealt with them in particular.
Sure.
And I think because their romance is so brief, for me, it's largely unflawed.
Yeah.
I think there are other characters who are more important to the Marvel comics and even the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the scope of how long they've been together and what they've accomplished together, but they're more deeply flawed, including a couple that I'm pretty sure is going to be on your list. But I guess we can talk about that when we get there. So yeah, I started with Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter. That's my number 5. Mm-hmm. How about you? What is your number 5 greatest Marvel Comics couple?
My number 5 greatest Marvel Comics couple are 2 people, of course, that are outsiders. One is an outsider from humanity, and the other is an outsider from humanity, but in different ways. I, of course, am talking about the Vision and Scarlet Witch.
Oh, I'm surprised you picked them.
They are my number 5. They both joined the Avengers as outsiders because, the Scarlet Witch was a villain. And Vision is kind of a villain when he starts out, too, because he is built by Ultron to destroy the Avengers, and then he turns on his master.
I mean, they're both literally children of 2 iconic villains.
Super villains.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I say, even though the Avengers accept them, they are truly outsiders to the Avengers. And also, when you think about Vision being a robot, so he doesn't understand humanity, and Scarlet Witch being a mutant, she doesn't understand humanity. It really makes sense that why these 2 outsidery characters sort of ended up. It makes sense why they talk to each other and why they fell in love, because I hear that a lot where people are like, I don't understand the Vision and Wanda's romance, and to me it makes.
I'm going to be honest, I'm in that boat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is my explanation helping you with this?
Actually, I was like, this is fascinating.
Yeah, when you think about the way they think, they're very similar. Also think about it from a course of their powers. Mm-hmm. Vision's powers are really undefined, and basically
so are Scarlet Witches.
And so are Scarlet Witches, right? So they're so similar, and their costumes are also outlandish.
Yes, in different ways, though.
In different ways. And there's something to be said about how these 2 people sort of find each other. And then there's also something to be said with when their marriage eventually explodes, and it explodes spectacularly.
Horrifically, yeah.
Well, look at who they are. That makes sense, too. This was never going to last. It was never going to last. And I find it so amazing that these 2 characters found each other on this team, found each other in this mansion, and sort of pushed past everything in their world telling them that they would not work, that they would not work personally, and that they would not work together, and everything. And they pushed past it and even figured out how to have kids. These 2 characters have kids.
2 kids. They have children, yeah.
Yeah, 2 kids that don't really exist. And so, it literally makes their romance on such I want to say ephemeral level, where it is about love, because they have nothing else. They have nothing else. They have no allegiances. They don't have they're not even Scarlet Witch and the Vision are even 2 characters that aren't that connected to the Avengers, even though they're stalwart members of the Avengers. To me, it's not an Avengers team unless the Vision is there.
I agree with that. Yeah.
But he's such an outsider member of he's almost like Batman is to Justice League.
Yeah.
I feel Justice League really needs Batman, but Batman a lot of times will just like turn off his Justice League communicator and say F you guys.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel the Vision's the same way. Like I feel the Vision, sometimes you're going to call the Vision and he's not going to show.
Yeah.
So these two really feel like, you know, superhero comics is a crazy world. And it's lucky that these two characters found each other. And then when you realize that they did find each other and that their love was so strong, it kind of makes sense. Like it really does make sense to me. And if you want a great example of that, just read Tom King's The Vision series. And there's a flashback issue about their love together. And it really makes it make a lot of sense. But my number 5, of course, is The Vision.
Can I ask you 2 questions about this?
Oh, please do.
So you brought up Tom King's Vision. So I did want to ask you, how do you feel about then Vision going off to build a more perfect version of a wife and a family?
You know, he uses Wanda's brain patterns for his wife.
I know he does, yeah. Which I think explains a lot of what happens to her, actually.
Yes. Yeah, because...
I hope that's not a spoiler. I don't think that's a spoiler.
It is. We won't say it. We won't confirm it either way. You know... it's the same thing. Like you knew that family's destined to fail, just like the Vision and Scarlet Witches. It's interesting because I feel the Vision's kind of like Data in Star Trek: The Next Generation. He wants to be human so bad, but the thing is that he's better than us.
Yes,
the
absolutely.
Vision's better than us. Data's better than us. And so it's such an interesting turn of character when you're like, you are so much better as you are. Why do you want to be the lesser thing? And I feel the Vision can never be with anybody, ever. He can't. It's impossible. But he desperately wants to be with someone,
which is actually a very human thing to want.
Well, and also it makes for an amazing story. What's your other question?
My second question is then, I know we're
by the way, feel free to interrupt me at any time to talk about anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know that we are specifically talking about comics, but how do you feel about the way their romance is being executed in the MCU?
Well, they're both really small supporting characters,
and they are very different versions of the characters.
Yes. Vision's closer to his comic book counterpart than Wanda is.
Yeah.
Because it kind of seems like with Wanda, they've never defined her powers, but now they just kind of seem to like lean back on telekinesis.
Yeah.
They're like, it's telekinesis.
Gross stuff. That's cool. Yeah.
But her powers aren't defined in the comics either. That's fine. I think Paul Bettany's an amazing Vision. I think he's such great casting for that part. The Olsen girl, whatever. I'm happy that there are allusions to it. There are moments of it.
Cool.
Like, especially where Vision's like, well, hey, Wanda in Civil War, I'm going to cook you dinner.
I love that. And I love that he sucks at it.
Yeah, and
because
he
doesn't taste.
And he's bad. He's like, I don't have taste. And then if you notice, he stops fighting the battle as soon as she's hurt. And he goes to her.
Yeah.
Which I think is very interesting as well. So, like, I admire it because I know they're never going to be leading characters. Like, I would be blown away if we ever get a Scarlet Witch and Vision movie. I don't think it's ever going to happen.
I don't think so either, but I would love it.
But I also know there are some pictures that have come out about an Infinity War that's going to come out soon. And they're a couple, it seems like. It looks like they're a couple.
Or they're at least pretending to be a couple.
Or they're pretending to be a couple. I like it because I like that we're just getting little touches of it. Because, again, and I think it's good. But I do think, sad to say, just like the comic books, it won't last long in the movies either.
I agree. I agree.
Because Vision's going to die.
No, don't do that to my robot baby.
I'm sorry. Thanos is ripping Vision's head off. It's going to happen.
I love him so much. Paul Bettany is so good in that part.
He'll be rebuilt. It'll happen.
Okay, good.
But he might not come back for like 2 movies. But Thanos,
what if he's kid Vision when he
Thanos is ripping that body apart.
No, my baby, my precious robot baby.
All right,
everyone I love dies.
All right, let's go to your number 4, Ashley. Who's your number 4 for greatest Marvel couples?
My number 4 is the only comic couple on my list that I actually read evolve and happen in real time.
Okay, interesting.
All of these I came to after they were originally published.
Okay, I'm going to make a guess.
Okay.
Is it Maggot and Dr. Cecilia Reyes?
God, I can't believe you brought the name of Maggot into this podcast. I didn't even know that Maggot was in a couple, so...
He's mad. I just made it up.
Okay. I was
fan
like,
fiction.
Shout out to the X-Men.
Hashtag fan fiction.
If you would like to send us your Maggot fan fiction, you could do that at GHL Podcast.
Please do.
Don't.
Maybe that should be the 200th episode. Maggot.
Barf. We've had a long discussion about what to do for that episode. So I read this comic in real time. I was a teenager when it happened. And I think for this property, it is the most mature attempted romance that we've had.
In the Marvel Comics universe?
No, for this particular title.
Oh, got it.
And my number 4 are Gert and Chase from The Runaways. Because I was a teenager when Runaways was coming out, so it was the most perfect book for me.
Were you Gert's age?
I was a bit younger when it was first coming out, but by the time it ended, I was about their age, yes. Not to age myself, but you can find it on the internet. It's not a secret.
Can you really?
My age? Yeah, I think you can.
Cool.
I think my age is on
Talk
IMDb. Gert, I was a weird theater girl. I know that might surprise you guys to learn.
No.
So Gert, the weird angry girl with I also had glasses, and I had pink hair, so she was the weird girl with glasses and purple hair and a dope dinosaur. Like, she was my into the Runaways universe. In the comics, because I think there's more people now who are familiar with the television show, Chase is kind of an idiot jock. In the show, they make him a smart jock. And although the weird smart girl and the dumb jock boy coming together as a couple, it's not an original trope. I think it's executed very well in Runaways. I think Brian K. Vaughan really makes you understand what these two characters see in each other and how, again, I love couples where you understand how they make each other better. Chase makes Gert braver and more confident, and Gert makes Chase more thoughtful and empathetic.
Interesting.
And that's why when they're together and they're functional, they're really great. But because they are 16 and 17, sometimes they suck together, and it's a big mess. And then spoilers for Runaways. We also have a Runaways lesson that you can go listen to.
The comics, not the show.
The comics, not the show. Gert eventually dies, and she sacrifices herself for Chase. And Chase has been severely injured a number of times, sacrificing himself for Gert and the larger group. And I think the fact that you can have two 16/17-year-olds who can care for each other that much, that they are willing to face mortality, I think that's very, very powerful. And there's a great arc where Chase is left alone with old Lace, and he can't really deal with having this personification of this person who was tied to Gert, and I think it's very powerful.
Okay.
And in the current comics, Chase has gone along and he's aged and he's an adult person now, and Gert was just brought back to life. Spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
And I think them having to deal with being the love of each other's lives, but now there's this weird societal barrier between them, I think is an interesting place for their relationship to go while still preserving sort of the youth and vibrancy of it. So I love Gert and Chase because I think that their relationship, it's very slow. It takes almost the whole second arc for it to come. So it's a well-earned relationship. You understand why they balance each other. And I think they represent a lot of the issues that you go through when you're having your very first romance of that person who just takes your heart and you want to be with them all the time and, lock the door and keep your parents out. And I think that that's something that comics doesn't do well often. Modern comics are very much for a more mature reader. And when you look at what's great about romance comics, it's often that first spark of attraction. And I think that they personify it perfectly. And I think they're doing a good job on the TV show. I think the two actors are really cute together.
Cool.
So yes, Gert and Chase are my number 4. Jason, who is your number 4 Marvel comic couple?
My number 4 comic couple for Marvel was a couple that I almost kept off this list. Because at first, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of this romance, but when I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I think you kind of have to put this one on here. That, of course, is the couple of Peter Rasputin and Kitty Pryde.
You were going to not put them on your list?
I was going to not put them on this list. I'm just not a huge fan of Colossus. I'm sorry, I hate to say that.
You are wrong, my friend.
I love his look, but he's kind of an idiotic character. Go read his books.
But he's... this couple's on my list later on.
Okay, sure.
I think he's best with her.
Oh, I agree. I have some. So, X-Men, Colossus, and Shadowcat, of course. Kitty is actually categorically underage when they first meet.
Yeah, they go out of their way to age her up so they could be together.
They do. And there's again, this was some of the stuff that was problematic about me putting this on this list is because some of the earlier scenes are Kitty really, really, really wants to have, I will say, relations with Colossus when she's underage, and he's actually the one that's like, no, let's wait. So I appreciate that 80s Marvel Comics actually did that. I know now they're finally getting married, but I think I finally put them on here because they're a big unrequited love, kind of similar to Captain America and Peggy, as you were talking about, because of the underage stuff, because of Peter dying at one point and then coming back, to point of Kitty riding a giant bullet in space and stuff like that. But I agree with your point that they are better together, because one of the best examples of Kitty Pryde and Colossus is in the Age of Apocalypse when they're married and they're the team leaders of Generation Next.
Yeah.
They are awesome together and they're really cool. And that's probably my favorite version of Kitty Pryde is in that version. But it's interesting because Kitty Pryde, to me, really personifies the X-Men character that has no idea what she wants, even in terms of men.
More than Rogue?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. Rogue just wants to be cured. That's Rogue. That's everything Rogue wants. Rogue's like, I don't want these powers. I don't want these powers. I don't want these powers.
That's fair. That's fair.
Kitty Pryde is more like, I'm here. What next? And they're like, sit in the danger room because we can't take you on a mission.
I thought you were going to say, I think that's very interesting. I don't know if you're wrong.
There is no right and wrong.
No, absolutely not. I just really like Kitty Pryde, so I'm going to be over here defending her. But to me, I thought you were going to say that Kitty Pryde personifies, in a way that I think Rogue and Jubilee do a lot as well, the a younger generation of characters.
I agree. When she was first introduced, I totally agree.
I know now she's supposed to be like 25 in a t-shirt.
My biggest problem with Kitty Pryde, and I don't mean to turn this into my problems with Kitty Pryde. No,
absolutely.
Is that as the character has aged up, you can see that a lot of writers don't know what to do with her. And I think that has made her history very problematic. I actually think one of Kitty's best runs is when she's with Excalibur.
I also think one of her best runs is in Astonishing X-Men.
Yes, agreed.
And that is the beginning of her adult relationship with Colossus, which is right after he's come back from the dead. And I really liked that arc reading it the first time because I love Kitty Pryde. I loved her when I first met her in the cartoons. And I do think that she loses definition as an adult person.
Agreed.
And I think that they make her sort of a more aggressive Jean Grey. And
interesting.
I do think it's funny when she is sassy to Emma Frost because I hate her. So that gratifies me on a number of different levels. Like I hate that character. But I think that we already have Jean, so I don't need a harsher version of Jean. And I think that exploring her romance with Peter Rasputin, you get to see more of who that character, I guess, really is at her core.
Sure.
And I appreciated that. But she is the perpetual girlfriend.
She is.
Of the Marvel. She's dated every Peter.
Yes, she has.
And I often don't like her in other relationships. So I think that's why her and Colossus stand out. Like I hated her with Star-Lord.
I'm actually, to be honest with you.
Sorry to anyone who loves that couple.
No, it's all right. I'm actually really excited that they're finally going to marry the characters off in the
comic books. How long do you think it'll last? Less than 5 years?
Well, I don't know because Jean and Scott lasted for almost 15 years. So that's a pretty good chunk of time. That would be my idea would be like, okay, if we're going to marry Kitty Pryde and Colossus, let's keep them married for a decade. So there's a good run of stories where they're married because they will get divorced. It will happen. It's comic books. It's melodrama. It's going to happen. But if we're going to make this decision, because I really think that it's funny. I think that the two of them together could really like become the matrons of the X school, and that would be really great. So, yeah, I don't know. Kitty Pryde and Colossus.
I'm also going to say that I'm not currently reading the X-Men comics, but that's enough for me to get to. I'm going to read that arc.
You're going to read the Wedding Initiative?
I am.
Right.
I am.
Then it did its job. Now, before we get to our number 3 episode.
Yes.
Or number 3 choices, not an episode. We're way past number 3. I just want to say thank you to this sponsor of our episode. It's sponsored by Lisa. Now, Lisa, as we've talked about many times, are one of our favorite sponsors. They are an innovative, direct-to-consumer online mattress brand. They're also very socially conscious. They care about people.
We love that.
And Earth, and they make beds that are super comfy, even for all the lovers in the Marvel Universe. You know what I'm saying there? Lisa's there for you, people in the Marvel Universe and our universe. Lisa, they plant one tree for every mattress sold, and they donate 1% of each employee's time to volunteer for local causes. So they're making sure that there are plenty of little Groots all over there popping up all over the place. They are an American-made mattress company that ships directly to your door in a box, and I'll tell you that part of the great thing about Leesa is just watching your mattress grow to full size. That's actually one of the coolest aspects of purchasing a Leesa mattress, I'm going to be honest with you. So you can try a Leesa mattress in your own home for 100 nights, risk-free, with free shipping, and it's available in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, and Germany. And you will get $100 off the Leesa mattress going to this URL, leesa.com/geekhistory. Now, Leesa is spelled Leesa, and you're going to ask for a promo code, and you're going to put in Geek History as one word. So go to leesa.com/geekhistory, get $100 off your Leesa mattress purchase, and use the promo code Geek History. Thank you to Leesa for sponsoring the show and for making super comfy beds and actually caring about the planet Earth.
Thank you.
All right, now back to our number 3.
Yes.
Ashley, who's your number 3 couple?
My number 3 couple is a couple that you actually introduced me to, Professor Jason Inman. It is the only LGBT couple on my list, and it's my favorite. I have an action figure of one of them. Someday I'll get the other one. It is Billy and Teddy Wiccan and Hulkling from the Young Avengers series. Interesting that Jason brought up Vision and Scarlet Witch because Billy is one of their soul children.
Billy's one of their children.
Yeah.
It's Billy and Speed.
Billy and Tommy, yeah. Speed.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he is the one who's more like Wanda. He's more witchy and more...
Yeah, because he's a magician.
Yeah, and more emotional. And I really was taken aback by these characters because I feel like until recently... LGBT characters haven't been portrayed the best way across all media.
Sure.
And I felt like in the mainstream comic universe, and this is based on what I had been reading up to this point. I'm not saying that there were no great LGBT couples before this, because Midnighter and Apollo predate them by quite a while, and they're great. But I really liked that we had a young gay couple, and they were portrayed just like every other couple that was running around Young Avengers at the time. They both worked together as leaders of their team and of this new universe that they were creating. They strengthen each other. I also liked that we got to see them doing normal stuff. Like, not every arc that they had was about like, it wasn't all a coming out arc. And I understand that coming out is very important and is a story that needs to be told, but I love it when not every LGBT character is defined by that.
Sure.
We got to see Hulkling and his weird squirrel mom, and they had to deal with that.
Thing. This is not only an LGBTQ story, this is a human alien romance.
Yeah. Interspeciality story.
Exactly.
But you just have to be like, comics, it's fine. And then we have another arc where we deal with Wanda showing up and what it means for her to be on the team and for Teddy to be meeting her. And I loved that. I talked about Gert and Chase earlier. You don't often get to see teenagers grow up in comics, and you don't often get to see them stick with the ramifications of them. It's amazing that Dick Grayson is like 25.
Yeah.
Or 21 or however old. Like, it's amazing that he's a grown-up
Especially
person.
when we met him at 10 in 1939.
Yeah. And I think Tim is still not old enough to rent a car. So
no, he's not.
So it's kind of amazing when you get to see them grow. And Billy and Teddy have been around for a lot less time than the Robins. And we actually get to see them get engaged, which is a very mature thing to do. And you get to see them dealing with the ramifications of what it means to be engaged, because, spoiler alert, it can be difficult and it changes your relationship.
Do they actually get married?
They don't get married.
That's what, I couldn't remember.
Which is sad. And Marvel Comics can hire me at any time to write their wedding arc. I would die. I would love to. I want them to be married so bad. And I was really hoping after the North Star marriage that they were going to be the next one.
We're looking forward to the Wickling marriage anytime soon.
Hashtag Wickling.
Yeah,
I ship it.
Wickling.
You could tweet me cute Wiccan and Hulkling art anytime. But I appreciate that we at least dealt with that. And the way that their engagement did end was in a mature way. And they still preserved their relationship. They just decide that they moved a little fast. And I think that that's a tremendous step in comic book storytelling and comic book storytelling for youth characters. And I just think they're so cute together that I could die. And I am dying for both of these characters to find definition outside of the Young Avengers, because at the time of this recording, spoilers, there's no Young Avengers titles.
No.
And these characters haven't found a new home, and I think that that's sad. And I think that there is a place for them, and please put them on the Champions or something. I just think they're so cute.
You want them on the the Champions? They would work on the Champions.
It's kind of the only young person team I could come up with on the top of my head. I don't know, but they should go somewhere.
They're a little bit older than the Champions, but sure.
Fine, put them on an Avengers Strike Force team.
Okay, I will. Wow.
But, Kate's off doing cool things, so they could be off doing cool things, and they could be off doing cool things and planning their wedding, is all I'm saying. So Wiccan and Hulkling, and they always come to mind whenever I think of my favorite Marvel couples. They're always way, way up there. So how about you, Jason? What is your number 3?
Well, Ashley, when you think about couples, you always think about the first family of things. Like there's always the first family of the White House. You know, you think about JFK and Jackie. You think about
political Beyonce.
The first family of Star Trek. Captain Kirk and Edith Keeler from City on the Edge of Forever. When you think about the X-Men, there's a first couple. And it's Scott Summers, Cyclops, and Jean Grey, Phoenix, as my number 3. You have the loyal soldier and his fiery queen.
That's real poetic. That's cute, Jason.
Because Scott Summers is the personification of Xavier's dream. He is going to follow Charles Xavier, for everything that he does. And even he follows it so far that he betrays it eventually, and actually succeeds. He actually does succeed at Xavier's dream way better than Xavier ever thought he would. He succeeds. And to me, of course, the romance that he would choose, or the partner that he would choose, would be the girl that trained with him at the school that is basically personifying his life. And it's Jean Grey, and it's also like the first girl that he could actually look at without blowing her away, so they again, like, they're a couple that really, really strengthens each other. And I also think that when they're together, when they're married, is the strongest run of X-Men comics ever. Like they're married for like a decade, and they really lead like this great run of stories in the X-Men. And so even when they're dating, they're really good.
Who's your favorite Summers Grey child? Because there's 100,000 of them. You can think about it if you need to.
Well, here's the thing. Because there's Rachel, who's their future daughter.
There's Hope.
Hope's not technically theirs.
There's Nate. Well, but she is and she isn't, right? And that's the thing with a lot of the children.
Hope's not. Hope's not really theirs. Nate's mother is Madeline Pryor, who is a Jean Grey clone,
but is still essentially Jean Grey.
Well, this is what I was going to say. It's Nathaniel. It's Cable, because if you go off of their honeymoon, Cyclops' and Phoenix's honeymoon is that they travel to the future and they raise Nathan from like 3 to like 15. So to me, what makes your mother is who actually raised you, and Jean Grey raised Cable. So she's his mother, not Madeline Pryor.
Cool.
In my head. Here's the other thing. Like, Scott Summers loved her so much that the minute she died, the first lady that looked like her, he married, which is Madeline Pryor. And I guess that leads to a lot of problems. But then he finds out that the clone isn't real, and he divorces the clone and goes for the real thing. Yeah. Like, that's how much he loves this chick. How much he loves her. And then here's the flip side of this. Their love for each other is so insane and so strong.
It's exhausting.
It is. Her love for him is so strong that when she dies, she sends this like cosmic wave out into the universe that is Scott be happy.
Yeah.
Even though that basically ends up that means that he's going to go with Emma Frost.
Can I tell you, I've gotten more nerd fights about Scott and Jean's relevance and importance as a couple. Maybe second only to Robin's importance to the larger DC Comics mythos. Like Scott and Jean is like a couple that I will fight so many people about.
Now, will you fight everybody? Like you don't think they're important, or?
No, I do, but I don't like them as a couple, which is a complicated thing to explain to people.
I agree with you. But you don't like Emma Frost as well. So who do you put Cyclops with?
I don't think I love me some sad Scott Summers. He can be my boyfriend.
And I know you are with me. A lot of people don't like Cyclops. I love Cyclops.
I love Cyclops. I just think Jean Grey for me is like a whole can of worms to unpack. And I do think that they are very strong together. And when things are good for them, it's really good. But like the Madeline Pryor thing and like the Phoenix thing, like it's exhausting to think about.
Yeah.
Like, I think the best and worst things in the X-Men often come out of whether or not Scott and Jean are on good terms.
I agree with you.
And the thing that I don't like about Jean, not to turn this into like why Ashley doesn't like Jean Grey.
Well, we did why I don't like Kitty Pryde apparently.
It drives me insane that every man in the X-Men universe like wants to sleep with her. Like, I hate the Wolverine thing. Like, I just hate it all deep down in my soul. And every time another character, like every time, and then Beast falls in love with her, and I'm like, I don't care anymore. Like, you should have just made him gay because they hinted at that, and that was more interesting. Jean exhausts me.
Well, Jean is exhausting, but
I think in the scope of the Marvel universe, they are integral.
Yes, but also think about, again, this is one of those where Vision and Scarlet Witch were perfect for each other, and Jean and Scott are so opposite that that's the reason why they're together. Because Jean is the crazy, like, I'm out here, fire!
Yeah.
You know, and Scott's like, by the book, by the book, by the book.
He is very grounded, yeah.
You know, so of course. You know, of course those would be the two that would fall in love. You know, and he needs it. I really like Scott and Jean. I'm a little worried that Jean Grey is now back. She's the real Jean Grey. The older Jean Grey is now finally back in the Marvel Universe, but Scott is dead now.
I mean, thank goodness, though, like, because young Jean Grey, no. Pass on all the young kids. Should have sent him back to the past.
Well, now we have two Jean Greys in the Marvel Universe, and we have a young Scott Summers in the Marvel Universe, but we don't have actual older Cyclops.
How old is the young Scott Summers? Is he legal?
No. They're all like 16.
I'm really nervous that he's going to sleep with adult Jean Grey. I'm not going to lie. I'm very nervous about that.
I will say that there is a scene in All New X-Men where Scott captures the young X-Men.
Yes.
And
that's a good scene.
And he puts them all in cells, and he comes to Jean, because at that time, in my head canon, in real world time, Jean at that point had probably been dead for like 12 years.
A while, yeah.
I think in comics time, Jean's been dead for maybe 5. Like, Jean's been dead for a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they're sitting there, and young Jean says this thing where she's like, I don't even really like young you, but seeing you older you and seeing what you become and the confidence and the leader, she's like, now I see it. Now I'm actually interested in you. And she reaches out to hold his hand, and he says no.
Yeah. Because Scott's a good guy.
Yeah, because he's like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Scott Summers is a good guy. So I always appreciated that scene that the teenager girl was the one like, yeah, let me hold your hand. And he's like, no, by the book, by the book, by the book. I like Scott. Yeah, Scott Summers and Jean Grey, again, yeah, they are. If you think X-Men for me, I always think Scott Summers and Jean Grey. Like, they're the ones, like, when I'm looking at that cover of the team, they're in front of it.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they are my number 3. Now, I will give you hints. This is the start of my trilogy of
Scott Summer romances.
Not Scott Summer romances.
Your number 2 is Madeline Pryor.
Scott Summers, Madeline Pryor. Number 1, Scott Summers, Emma Frost. No. Number 1, Scott Summers and his visor.
I ship it.
No, this is the start of my trilogy of what I consider to be Marvel first couples.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's my number 3. Ashley, what's your number 2?
Well, my number 2 was Shadowcat and Colossus.
Oh, so we can talk more about that if you want.
Well, I think we already talked about it a lot. I don't know.
Well, why? This was pretty high up your list. Why number 2?
They're honestly probably my favorite couple.
Then why aren't they number 1?
Because the one that I put at number 1, I think, is more important to the overall Marvel universe.
This is your list, Ashley.
I know that, but
don't let anybody change that.
Well, that's pretty much what I do with these lists. Okay. I just thought it would be difficult for me because I knew that you would ask me why I put them higher than my number 1 couple, and I didn't know if I could.
By the book.
You are Cyclops if you're an X character.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm not that much of a dick.
I don't think Cyclops is a dick, and
I
think people who say that don't understand the character and where he's coming from. Not to throw down with anyone who thinks Cyclops is a dick.
Back to Kitty Pryde and Colossus.
Yeah, I just like Kitty Pryde and Colossus because I feel like it's a little less forced. And really, the main X-Men couples that I had experienced up to this point were the Jean and Scotts or Jean and Logan. And
all the drama in Crazy Town.
Which, again, I find exhausting. And I do feel like I feel like those characters, until the most modern run of X-Men, were not allowed to even look at other characters. And then when they made Scott look at other characters, they made an even worse choice with Emma Frost. Even more drama, even more nonsensical character.
It's not a worse choice. It does make sense if you think about it.
I don't think so.
Scott and Emma are not on my list.
I'm actually surprised that you put Scott and Jean on your list and not Scott and Emma, because I do know that you like Scott and Emma.
I do like Scott and Emma, but Emma is an
insane person.
Scott belongs with Jean. Scott's with Emma because Emma's the bad girl.
Yeah, I know that.
He's by the book.
But I don't like it.
That's the reason why he's with Emma.
But so for me, I always felt like Colossus and Kitty was a little less force and a little less, we have to do this because we've been doing it.
You buy their
since
love.
The night. I do. I earnestly do. And I also think because I never experienced the underage romance until I went back and did more reading. So for me, it was never problematic. They were always two peers who were great together. Also, just the visual of that cover where he's behind her and she's reaching up to like touch his head.
Oh, the John Cassaday cover
is so beautiful.
Or Cassidy. I don't know how you say his name.
I don't know how you say his name either. I'm really sorry. You're an amazing artist and I love you. And I don't know how to say your name.
We know you're listening.
Yes. You can tweet us at any time. That was one of the first images of a comic book couple that I ever found really striking.
I think it's Cassaday.
And I just wanted to stare at. And I love the idea that this indestructible, physically infallible man falls in love for a girl who can phase through, like she can literally reach inside of him.
Their powers are opposite.
And I think the metaphor of that, and that he is also allowing her inside him emotionally, I think is very powerful.
You know, the funniest thing is that their powers are opposite, but their personalities, it's funny, their personalities are opposite of their powers. Like, because I think Kitty is stronger than Colossus.
Absolutely.
Like, yes. Colossus is the guy that was like, we must be nice. And she's like, no.
Yeah, no. Kitty, yeah, she could be the head BIC.
Yeah.
Which is what I love about her. And I don't think they were ever, when you go back and read the Claremont stuff, I don't think they were ever intended to be posed as a couple. I think that's something that came later. But I do think that they do fit on a number of metaphorical levels together. And I think that's also what I like about them. And then, they never work out until now. So we're going to see what happens. But so they were my number 4. And also,
do you have any other favorite stories or things that, besides Astonishing X-Men, that you really dig with Colossus and Kitty?
I just think it's the best example of them. And I don't always think they're well written together.
Sure.
But I'm always a little conflicted because I do love the Ultimate story where Colossus is gay. Like, I thought that was a very interesting.
I really like that idea.
Use of that character, because Colossus could easily just be a blockhead. And I think that, because he's just this physically strong man with biological armor. And I think any example of the fact that he is a real person and he does have real emotions is powerful, because that's what human beings are like. We are complicated.
Yes.
So that was my number 2.
Cool.
So Jason, what is your number 2?
My number 2 continues the trend of first families. There is going to be some people that are going to fight me on this. But I believe it 100% to be true. Mr. Peter Parker has a soulmate, and her name is Mary Jane.
Oh, that's my number 1. I did this to you in one of our last lists, so I guess it's only fair.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, let me make my points, and then you please talk about everything.
Yeah.
For me, this is the true Spidey romance. I actually miss their relationship in the comic books a lot. I really do. Now, this is the girl that made a deal with the devil for him. That's how much she loves him. And a lot of people I know, a lot of Spider-Man fans, will make the case that Gwen Stacy is the true love of Spider-Man and that his life all changed when she fell off the bridge. And yes, that is true. His life did change. But if you go back to publication history, Gwen Stacy was killed because people didn't like her.
The cult of Gwen Stacy, I earnestly believe came out of like Spider-Man. It is a modern day
I think so
construct.
too. I think,
and I love Gwen Stacy.
I love Gwen Stacy as well, but I think it's a thing of people missing the old, because Stanley has said in several interviews, because he killed her because they got letters that people thought Gwen was standing in the way of Peter and Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. Here's the other thing. Mary Jane, if you go off, this is in continuity. In Untold Tales of Spider-Man, Mary Jane visited her Aunt Anna, who is Peter and May's neighbor, and she saw Peter put on the Spider-Man costume and left when she was like 13 and kept it secret.
I love that. It's one of my favorite retcons.
I love that. I love that too. It's so amazing. Both of these characters would literally march through hell naked, carrying a bucket of water on their head, but could never drink it, for each other. And I don't think there's any other comic book couple, including my number one. I don't think my number one would do that for each other. That's how like devoted to each other it is. And it's another thing too, like there's this new series, Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, where you get to see them married and they have a child. It's so good. And it makes me a little mad that Marvel was like, we got to make him single again. And they had to do this big thing because like going back and reading those Mary Jane storylines, they're so powerful and they're so amazing. And I miss married Spider-Man. I really, really do miss married Spider-Man. And I think that making Spider-Man single, I think, was a mistake, because Mary Jane ever since then has had nothing to do.
I mean, she's barely in the comics.
She's barely in the comic books. And I think that one of the best single issues of all time, by the way, that would be a great list if anybody wants to suggest it, the greatest single issues of Geek History Lesson.
All of mine are Chuck Dixon Robinson.
That'd be funny.
And one is Birds of Prey #8, that one where him and Babs kiss.
I think it's a little bit later than that. But one of the greatest single issues of all time, I think, is Ultimate Spider-Man number 13, and that the only thing that happens in that issue, excuse me, I'm typing down the idea of the greatest single issues of all time, but please suggest it at GHL Podcast.
Yeah, we would love some TAs for that episode.
In Ultimate Spider-Man number 13, the only thing that happens in that issue is Peter reveals his identity to Mary.
Oh, that's a great issue.
The whole issue, Spider-Man does not appear. And Peter has to show his spider powers to her because she doesn't believe him. Like, she thinks he's making fun of her. And like,
I mean, why would you believe anyone?
So he does all these flips around the floor, and Aunt May barges in the room because Aunt May thinks they're having sex.
Yeah.
And Aunt May's like, you can't have sex, you're too young.
Well, can you imagine, like, you would just hear this boy thumping around upstairs? Of course, that's what you would think.
Yeah, and Mary Jane's up there.
Yeah.
They love each other, and they're more devoted to each other, I think, than any other Marvel Comics company. And everything about Spider-Man and his stories is about emotion. And I really think his love to Mary Jane helps, I want to say, increase that and make it stronger. So why you, Peter and Mary?
Because I generally am not a huge fan of canon couples. And they're one of the only ones that from the beginning I was like, yes, this is correct. This is the way that it should be. Even in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, where I'm not a biggest fan of the portrayal of Mary Jane there, I think that they do a good job at showing that they need each other and how good they are together. I also think I love Gwen Stacy, but I think Gwen Stacy is like your first love, and I think Mary Jane is his true love. And to go back to Spider-Man Blue, I think that does a good job at showing how the three of them, their relationship and their friendship with Harry was important, and that I like the idea that Mary Jane understands how everything affects Peter. She understands why he misses Gwen Stacy. And the scene where she comes up to the attic at the end and she's like, hey, I miss her. She's
not jealous.
Too. Yes.
Yeah.
Because Mary Jane can very easily and has been portrayed as a very shallow, dumb girl.
She can be. Because, but she's not.
Because they want to make her a model and they want to make her an actress. And there are certain stereotypes that come along with that. But she's not that. She's very emotionally mature, and Peter's not. Because Peter has a lot of emotional damage. He's had a lot of trauma in his life.
Peter's a Dorcas.
Yes,
and Peter uses his bad humor to mask that. Here's one thing that you're exactly right about that. Peter has had so much trauma for a young kid, but by the time he becomes 20, he has seen basically his real father is dead. His
mother is dead.
His mother's dead. His actual father, Uncle Ben, is dead.
Gwen's dead.
Gwen dies. He loses probably the biggest role model he ever had in his life, which is Captain Stacy.
Yeah.
Like he just watches people
Norman
die.
Osborn hates him.
And then he loses his best friend. Well, that happens after he's 20, but his best friend Harry like stops talking to him.
Yeah.
Like this kid like would be so messed up.
Yeah. And she can be there to ground him. I also love that Mary Jane is successful, independent of Peter Parker.
Yeah.
She is good at what she does. Now, sometimes depending on the timeline, it takes her a while to get there, but I like that she doesn't need him. Like they can both be successful.
He needs her for the paycheck.
Independent of each other.
Remember, Peter Parker's greatest enemy is poverty.
I know that. We'll always remember that. But I love 30s married successful Peter Parker. I think to me that is the logical high point or end point for that character. Like he should get everything he wants. In the way that,
For a time, Peter sabotages himself, though.
I know that, but in the way that, like, you want Harry Potter, right, to, like, get married and be happy so that the kid under the stairs gets everything that he wanted because he worked so hard for it.
Yeah.
And I think that I hate single Peter Parker. I hate bachelor Peter Parker because he's got no game. And frankly, no matter who draws him, Peter Parker's, like, a 6 out of 10. Like, let's be honest, right? Like, he's not a hot guy.
Wait, okay, let's go here. Okay, as a a cipher for our women listeners or our men listeners who like men. Ashley, who draws a really hot Peter Parker and who draws a really ugly Peter Parker?
Everyone draws a really hot Peter Parker now.
Oh, okay. Like, so Adam Kubert, who's drawing
Ditko, yes. Ditko drew the best Peter Parker because he kind of looked like a doofus.
Okay.
And Peter shouldn't be ugly, but like, I'm sorry to anyone who thinks Tobey Maguire is really sexy. He was a perfect casting choice because Tobey Maguire is like a fine-looking guy.
So everybody draws an ugly Peter Parker.
Everyone draws a hot Peter Parker now.
Oh, okay.
Since like the 70s or 80s, like they always draw him hot. And I get it. He has to be ripped because he's a superhero.
Yeah.
But like Andrew Garfield, too attractive to play Peter Parker.
Okay. What about Tom Holland?
I don't know, because Tom Holland still looks like a child.
Yeah, he's still pretty young.
Tom Holland is like, he's okay. But I think Tobey Maguire is like the perfect Peter Parker.
Just the right ugliness.
I don't mean ugly, but I just mean like Peter shouldn't be a supermodel.
Yeah, that's Mary Jane.
Right. And, and it's not like beautiful people can't date middle. And I know this is such an arbitrary, like, shallow thing to say, but I do believe that there are certain heroes, like Bruce Wayne needs to be good looking. And I don't think Peter Parker needs to be good looking. And I think that if he's not good looking, then you understand more what Mary Jane values in him and why she loves him. And I think that that's an important part of the character.
Okay.
And everyone draws him too hot now. You got to ugly him up a little bit.
Okay. Ugly up that Peter.
Yeah.
Ugly up that Peter.
But that's not what that character, that's not why you love Peter Parker. You love him because he's the Dorcas who got everything that he wants. Because he suffered so much. So, yes, I don't remember what my original point was, but Mary Jane and Peter Parker are the greatest Marvel Comics couple.
They're your number one.
They're my number one. You can't, I don't think
number
you can.
One.
I know who yours is going to be, and I know why you're going to make that argument. But I think, like, you can't beat it. Like, they're the American dream. They're two kids from lower income Queens who made it big, and they made it together, and they have a beautiful child. And, like, what more could you want? Who's your number one?
My number one, speaking of the American dream, the fella in my relationship also grew up poor. If you were to ask people that know comic books who is the first couple of the Marvel Universe, I think you would be hard pressed to not say Reed Richards and Sue Storm.
I knew they were going to be your number one.
Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm.
The Invisible Woman.
The Invisible Woman. Now, Sue came from privilege. Reed was poor. Reed built himself up. So Reed is the personification of the American dream. Reed and Sue are JFK and Jackie Onassis. They are the personification of the American dream, so much that they go to space.
Sue even
has the hairstyle of Jackie.
I really think that Kirby draws her like Jackie O.
Now, here's the thing that also makes them a little bit more the best couple. Stan Lee is the creator of the Marvel Universe. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. But a little bit more Stan Lee. Sue Storm is based on Stan Lee's wife.
That's true, yeah.
Joan, who recently passed away. So there is a version of that story where you could say that Reed and Sue are Stan and Joan Lee. Even in the very first issue of Fantastic Four, when Reed is thinking about going into space, and he tells all of them not to go with him. And Sue says, "Don't say it, Reed. I'm your fiance. Where you go, I go."
Can you imagine if we'd seen that in a movie? That would have been great.
Yeah. But see, that tells you everything you need to know, that Sue realizes, here's the thing, Reed is such a big brain. And Reed is always going to be the guy that's like, let's go out that door. Let's jump over that mountain. Let's hop up that tree. And sometimes it's a bad decision and sometimes it's a good decision.
Yeah.
But Sue, here's the dynamic of the Fantastic Four. Let me explain this to you.
Jason also loves Sue Storm, so I'm excited for you to talk about her.
I think Sue Storm is the greatest character in the Marvel Universe. So Reed Richards is going to be like, hey, there's a fire pit in there. Let's jump in it.
Yeah.
And so he jumps and doesn't wait.
Yeah. He's not a planner. Not much of a planner.
So Ben's like, I don't even know what a fire pit is. Johnny's like, that seems stupid. And Sue's going to turn around them and be like, all right, we are going to do this because Reed wants to do it and he pays for everything. So jump your ass in that fire, boys. And they're all like, yes, ma'am. And they jump in the fire.
Can I ask you, and I'm not denigrating your choice,
sure,
but how do you not just view Reed as a monster? Because that's kind of where I come down. I love Sue, but I think Reed is like a monster.
Reed is a crazy man. Because he has to be, because especially when you see the comparison to Dr. Doom, because Dr. Doom is insane. And if Reed is the equal to Dr. Doom, then Reed has to be as equally as crazy. But here's the difference. Reed is devoted to Sue at every turn because Reed does everything because of Sue. There have been many stories that have retconned into existence that Reed has created the Fantastic Four and made them celebrities and made them rich because he feels so much guilt about what he did to Ben and what he did to Johnny and what he did to Sue. I would make the argument that he does it more for Sue than anybody else. That he realizes that basically making her a mutant could have severely ruined her life. So what's the best thing to do? I'm going to make her a celebrity. I'm going to make her the most famous person in the world. That's my next plan. Again, it's kind of a crazy plan, but what is Reed Richards known for? Crazy plans, right? There have been several storylines that have shown that when Sue is not happy, the Fantastic Four stops. It dead stops. Like, they don't go on any adventures. They don't do anything. They also are the comic book couple that have been together the longest. Superman and Lois don't count because they don't really get together until like the late 60s.
Have Sue and Reed ever divorced?
No. They've never divorced. They have been separated, but they've never divorced. Now, when we first meet Reed and Sue, they're engaged. They're engaged in issue 1. We have never met, except for stories that have retconned. In their proper titles, we've never met single Reed. We've never met single Sue before their time. They've always been together. And to me, like, the FF is a family, and the rock of that family is the mom and dad. And this basically makes Reed and Sue the mom and dad of the universe. And again, he is crazy. But again, what you talked about with Mary Jane for Peter, that is what Sue is for Reed. Sue keeps him in the real world. And then think about as well, the reason why they're the greatest couple is because they've gone as far to making their family with the Fantastic Four, but they've also created children as well. And Franklin and Valeria and all their stuff like that are just as meaningful. And to be honest with you, we don't have the Fantastic Four in the current Marvel universe as the time of this recording. And I think you really feel it. I really think you feel the Fantastic Four not being around in the Marvel universe. And I think And I'm going to steal this from DC publisher Dan DiDio once told me that he said that he thinks that you could always tell how good DC is doing as a company by the quality of the Superman books. If the Superman books are good, DC is good. I think the Marvel Universe has the same thing in terms of the Fantastic Four.
That's very interesting.
We haven't had a Fantastic Four title since the second wave of Marvel Now.
And I'm going to be honest, it wasn't great.
Yeah. When has, since Secret Wars, we haven't had a Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
I don't think Marvel's been good since Secret Wars. I really don't. And that's when all the conversations of like, what is happening to Marvel really started. Notice, no Fantastic Four. And I think that's a big thing. Like when the Fantastic Four is good, the Marvel Universe is awesome. And when the Fantastic Four are bad, the Marvel Universe is bad. Like part of the reason why I always love Heroes Reborn is because the Heroes Reborn Fantastic Four title is great. And it's the best one of the four. And it really, I think, elevated all of them. I don't know. Please ask me some questions if you want to. Like any other questions about this? Have I made my point here? I don't know.
I think you've eloquently made your point. Yes.
Again, I call Sue Storm the best character in the Marvel Universe because she has to deal with the most insane person in the Marvel Universe who could easily be a bad guy. And by the way, in the Ultimate Universe, Reed went bad.
He is a bad guy. Yeah,
he is a bad guy. And she has controlled him, and she is able to direct his energy towards positive things and really good things.
Sweet.
And I think Sue is the strongest person on that team in terms of personality and power.
Yeah.
So that's why she's the greatest Marvel character. And of course, the greatest Marvel character has to be in the greatest Marvel couple.
Oh,
that's what I think.
Cool.
So,
shall we recap our lists?
Yes, please. Let's do that real quick.
Okay, so my list going from 5 to 1 is Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter, Gert and Chase from The Runaways, Billy and Teddy from Young Avengers, Colossus and Shadowcat of the X-Men, and Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson.
My number 5 is the Vision and Wanda Scarlet Witch. My number 4 is Kitty Pryde and Colossus from the X-Men. My number 3 is Scott Summers Cyclops and Jean Grey Phoenix from the X-Men. My number 2 is Peter Parker and Mary Jane from Amazing Spider-Man. And number 1 is Reed Richards and Sue Storm from the Fantastic Four, also known as Sue Richards. For our recommended reading, I thought we would put up some of the stories that have made us talk the most. So on recommended reading, go over to geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading if you want to read about some of these couples. Here are some suggestions. Number 1 is the Fantastic Four by Mark Waid and Mike Waringo book. So if you want to read about Reed and Sue, my number 1 choice. I think that's a great book to do it. I think they have a great dynamic in there, and you get to learn a little bit more about Fantastic Four and such. My number 2 is the Ultimate Spider-Man Collection Volume 1 because it includes that issue of Spider-Man and Mary Jane. So that is Ashley's number 1, and it like goes around that. And also because Ashley was so passionate about it, our number 3 is the Astonishing X-Men Collection.
Heck yeah.
So that way you can see a little bit of that Kitty Pryde and Colossus love in that goodness collection right there. You can also you get some pretty steamy
there's some
pretty steamy sex scenes.
Nudity in
there's some
if you like Scott Summers and Emma Ross,
oh mama,
Logan throws Scott naked out a window.
There's some steamy stuff in there. So yeah, there you go. Our Geek History Lesson Extra over at patreon.com will be all about some other couples. Like we have a list. There are some couples that I'm surprised didn't make your list. I bet you there's some couples that you're surprised that didn't make my list. We're going to talk about all that and some other couples that we maybe left off the list. But before we leave the show, we got to go to the Geek History Lesson Honor Roll. Ashley, what is that?
The Honor Roll is where if you go over to iTunes and you give us a 5-star review, we'll read it, whatever you write, because it helps us in the algorithm.
Within reason.
Well, yes. It helps us bring
go crazy here.
more students to the Mind University. It helps us open up this community, and it helps us grow this podcast to do more cool, ambitious things.
Well, this week we got we have a lot of 5-star reviews, actually, so thank you for all that.
Thank you.
We have a big list. So this week, I thought I'd let 2 students into the Teacher's Lounge and put them on the honor roll and give them gold stars, and stores. You can have gold store if you want. The first one comes from Pink Wink 12.
That's cute.
Their comment says, never thought I'd like this kind of stuff, but they make it extraordinary, interesting, and awesome. If you ever liked any of this, totally check it out. Smiley face, thumbs up, heart.
Nice.
So the second one comes from 5777 Hermes 89 that says, living in the Smallville of Oregon, I travel long highways to and from work. And although the drive is quite beautiful, it is very lengthy, and listening to GHL makes the time fly. Please keep up the good work. So thank you to Pink Wink 12 and 5777 Hermes 89 for leaving us 5-star reviews on iTunes. Your keys to the Geek History Lesson Teachers Lounge will be in the mail. Please don't screw up the curing machine.
Yeah.
And if you want to join their honor roll, go over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review, and you get keys as well to the Teachers Lounge, where you get to see embarrassing pictures of Ashley and her first year of being a teacher in the Mine University.
Yeah, there you go.
We made her the mascot. Okay. You can also subscribe.
What is our mascot?
I don't know, but you just made it up. There are pictures of it. So it was some sort of bug creature.
Ew.
Yeah, all right. So go subscribe to us over on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere you can listen to podcasts. And if you want to suggest future lessons, like maybe our greatest single issues of all time, I think that sounds like a great discussion. Ashley, where can they do that?
Or if you would like to recommend our greatest DC couples of all time, you can do that at geekhistorylesson.com, facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, or on our official Twitter at GHL Podcast. There's like a bazillion ways to contact us in all those places, including you could send us cute Herbie robots, and we'd be really impressed.
Herbie. By the way, we have a great Fantastic Four lesson, 2-parter.
Taught by Mr. Inman.
Yes, that's right. And you head over to our Patreon, as we said. We're reaching out to all of our listeners to just give $1 a month or 25 cents an episode to help keep this show going and help us create more podcasts. Honorable mentions of Marvel couples that didn't make the list, of course, is going to be there. Follow me on Twitter at Jawiin, Jawiin. Follow Ashley on Twitter at Ashley V. Robinson, and follow the podcast on Twitter at GHL Podcast. That is it for the greatest Marvel couples. I am Jason Love is in my eyes, Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson, and Professor Jason, why don't you dismiss this amorous class?
Okay, boys. Reed wants to hop in the lava pit, and he pays for all your food. He pays for the fantastic car, and Ben, he pays for your rock diapers. Yep, Ben, he pays for your rock diapers. So you're gonna get in that lava pit. Walk over there. Jump in. That's right. God damn, I love my husband.